George and Lynn and I went to this very good workshop last Friday where there were a lot of people who were from local historic government towns, and they gave us a lot of good information. But I did meet Robin Reed there, and we had asked her to come down and talk to us because Chris Close had suggested that we do that, and asked her to help us understand what it was we would have to do to be a local government, whatever that term is. And so that I spoke to her there, and she said, well, she really can't come down until she has a draft of our ordinance and a cover letter from the town manager. So I came back and told that to James, and so James said he would come and talk to us about the implications of being a part of this, and just what it involves for the town, for the selectmen, and for us. Because apparently, she said that would have to come from the town manager, but I think we're thinking that it also has to go to the selectmen first. So, James, I'll let you take it from here.
Yeah, I think it's been demonstrated by their interest in Jack's attending meetings in advancing the idea of having a commission instead of a committee. But a commission has different parameters. There's more responsibility. There's a need to meet. There's a training need. In part of the charge of the commission is to do education and outreach, and you have some examples of that from I think we've seen Bangor and a couple of others. George has provided us with
I have
several.
this folder of things for
York and Bangor in there.
and Gardner.
Gardner. So moving to a commission also gives us some additional things that we can, tools in the tool bag, if you will. It's a shortcut to reviewing National Register nominations. It could make that process quicker if somebody wanted to get on the National Registry. It's almost making the job of the state a little bit easier but again, training, and we also have to have someone on the committee or hired by the committee as a professional to give advice. So, and veto power if people wanted to do things that were not consistent with historic registry designation. And with veto power comes appellate responsibility. Make a decision that someone can't do something, and they have the right to take it to the Board of Appeals. So when George and I, Maria, talked about it, one of the things we discussed was, instead of building the entire program and submitting that entire program to the town, putting a lot of work into it and submitting that to a town, and then running the risk of the town saying, we don't want to go this direction, because this requires an ordinance. And what George has provided is a and Marie's
Which you
got
don't have in your packet.
is a skinnied up ordinance to say, this is the building of the commission. Do you agree with us? And then we would build the rest of the ordinance, which would be the rules of the road, if you will. But the basic rules of the road are just like the National Historic Registry rules. It's just enforcing them, but they have to be in our ordinance. So we would be going to town meeting asking if the town itself wants to go in this direction. And I think clearly we don't want, well, I can speak for myself. I don't like wasting time. I'd rather get the consensus or get the vote of the town before putting in all the back extra work. They're meeting upstairs. They're arranging furniture.
You mean it's not a truck going through?
No.
Yeah.
And that's kind of conceptually where it is. An application affecting a historic property would be planning board, and if it was commercial, if not, it would be some change to it would have to come before us.
So you would present this to the selectmen.
First step is the selectmen and get their agreement to bring it forward to a town meeting warrant. And the next town meeting, of course, is in March.
And this is what would go to the town
But
meeting.
in between time, we can actually do a little more work. We should be doing more work, and I did have George copy us from a thumb drive that was given of the Commission Assistance and Mentoring Program for Historic Preservation, a document for the selectmen about what commissions actually do. And I have it. We are lucky to have George to download this stuff, because it is on a thumb drive. And also lucky to have Tom here. Tom was on the Bangor Commission. Maybe you could give him some insight as to how much. I don't imagine it's going to be as easy as what we go through for Historic Preservation Committee meetings. You might enlighten us on how much work.
It operates more like a planning board,
Mm-hmm.
in that people come before the commission asking to make a change to a property. It could be an addition, it could be something torn down, changing windows, re-siding the building, re-roofing. I mentioned to Marie that I got on the commission because I went before the Bangor Commission and I thought, ooh, they don't quite understand the aspects of building that I felt they should understand, and hopefully I made a contribution. And I also told her that at some point, I guess it was every 3 years, the term was for 3 years, you would re-up, and you'd be interviewed by some city councilors. And one of the city councilors was looking at our previous year's requests. He said, "You've approved them all." And I had to stop and think for a moment, and I said, yeah, because if somebody came in and did something that wasn't appropriate, we kind of brought them along and explained the situation as to why this made sense, and everybody would amend their application so it would pass, which made it a lot easier because we were always doing this ballot, for me at least. I don't like telling people what to do with their properties, but we also don't want to damage what is a historic property, doing something that could otherwise be done properly, maybe for the same cost or less, or maybe slightly more. And another example I'll give is when the Bangor Waterworks was saved and being rebuilt, I couldn't conceive that they could even do it. It was so far gone, but they did. And one of the things on the waterworks was it had a slate roof. And my brethren on the commission at the time said, well, we need another slate roof. Now this is a building that's hanging over the river. And when that building was re-roofed, they have to have a man in a boat in addition to having the roofers tethered. My God, how? So the first step was that as strict historic preservationists, we need another slate roof, which is extremely expensive. Isn't necessarily, they are long-lived, but wasn't necessarily appropriate for such a large structure. My suggestion was, let's do a metal roof. It'll last as long, and it'll be a lot easier and quicker and less expensive. They ultimately wound up doing an asphalt roof, which I wasn't crazy about, but they kind of looked like shingles, slate shingles. And, you know, now we have a question, what makes more sense? Saving the building by letting them put on a roof that they will have to replace at some point in the future when they don't have to do 1,000 other things where this building will fall into the ground. Let's get the roof on it and it's secure. And I took some static for that. And it was at the end of my tenure, so it wasn't, but really, I wasn't upset about it anyway, because ultimately the big picture was the building was saved. 25 years from now, somebody else can look at it and say, okay, let's put a metal roof, or let's do a slate roof, or the technology might be better. So it was always interesting situation. I could see maybe some concern coming up about having a commission telling you what to do with your property, but on the other hand, we preserve the town, and we have so much here in this, this area, especially on Route 1 and other parts of the town too, that these buildings really are very valuable and are, at least somewhat in peril, in that anybody can do anything to them. And it isn't, it always, to me, was, let's guide people, let's not hit them over the head. And that is the way to make it work.
More educating people
Yeah,
on
yeah.
best practices.
Before I joined the commission, they were hitting people over the head, and I always felt, that isn't necessarily the way to get people and all that does is introduce the possibility of people just trying to sneak around the edges of things.
And my understanding, my concern is that we all have different tastes, and who's to say that one person's taste is better than another? But I think that we do have guidelines that come to us from the state and from the federal commission that will help us determine whether something is appropriate or not appropriate. So I think that's very, very helpful, because I wouldn't want to put myself in the position of saying that's not good when somebody else might have a different opinion. But if we can go to some kind of an authority, then I would feel more comfortable.
I think there's a lot of latitude there too. It isn't as restrictive as some might perceive it to be.
I'm concerned about, just an example of what you're saying is, I've been concerned about the metal roof on this building that's the block down here in Main Street. And so I said to the consultant at the meeting on Friday, I said, what do you do about people who want to put metal roofs on these wonderful old 18th century or 19th century buildings? And she says, that's a problem. She said, sometimes you just have to let them do it, but be sure that it's in a color that is compatible with the building. So, they have to compromise also.
But there's two kinds of metal roofs. There's the kind they have downtown, which is a standing seam, which is historic, or there's the more modern screw-down type roof, which is less expensive. And I would prefer on a historic building to see a standing seam roof, because at least there's some historic precedent. Maybe newer technology, but at least it has the look. But really, those buildings probably had cedar roofs for many years. Does it make sense to do cedar? Possibly not.
No.
But I'm not crazy about asphalt shingles as an alternative, because I know, you have the experience.
We've done it.
Sometimes they just don't wear very well. They don't last very long, and then there's a major expense.
Yeah.
Well, doesn't that, in a town like ours, where we're on the water, certain things don't make sense because they get the weather. It's like the Historical Society house. One side of that house always needs painting.
Yep.
No matter what we do, no matter how
Yep.
often we do it, there's always, every fall, there's spots where the weather just takes the paint
Yep.
and runs with it. So I can see where it's going to take some education, or somebody with that kind of knowledge, building knowledge or carpentry knowledge, to be able to educate the rest of us.
Well, and I think that's why there is a requirement, there's an ongoing requirement for education from committee members. So it's a commitment of the committee to actually do
Well,
a
that was part
continuing
of our
education.
mission. That's part of our original mission. Yeah.
Educating ourselves and the public. So this is a little bit more of a a little bit more of a commitment than a committee, and I don't want to.
Hard
Well,
enough to get committee.
I don't know how Bangor, if they did much on the training side.
We did. We had usually a few times while I was there, we had people come from the state commission
Yeah.
to do a seminar, either on updated Department of the Interior guidelines, or Earl Shuttleworth would come in and speak about buildings, or they would do a presentation of the imperiled structures in the state. They would put them out every year, buildings that they were very concerned about losing, and then explain why they were in danger of being lost. So it was fairly low key. Somebody would come in and we'd spend an hour and a half, depending on what it was.
So that's not as large a commitment as I'm making it out to
No,
be
it
then, so-
really wasn't. And, you know, we had, on our committee, we had Bob Kelly from House Survivors in Bangor, who was usually the consultant for the time I was there. Bob was a good friend.
Usually the consultant for the commission, for your commission?
Yeah, yeah. So he would comment on the building technology.
What kind of a budget did you have?
Oh,
Now,
gosh.
did you have to pay your consultant?
No, yeah, I think he worked for free. You know, he was an old, he did,
get hired?
his business was House Survivors, and they renovated old houses. And the interesting thing about renovating old houses is you are using the old stuff over again much of the time. So there was a lot more labor involved, so he loved it from a business point of view, because he had a lot of people working. But he also did things like, I know he invested a lot of money in a oven where you could take an old wooden sash and put it in, and it would soften all the old finishes, and he could make an old window be like new again. And we had a little bit of discussion between he and I about whether it's necessary to have an original wooden window. I mean, if it's a real original wooden window from a certain vintage, I think it's definitely worth saving. But windows, roofs, doors, not so much doors, but windows and roofs in particular get changed a lot over the years. And my point was that, okay, if we change out the window, if we don't change that opening, like this window opening's been closed in a little bit, the original aperture is there. If you drop a vinyl window in, that doesn't freak me out, because at some point you can go back to a wooden window if there was or something perhaps better. That's kind of anathema, but I looked at that as not being a nightmare scenario, that if we go to vinyl windows,
And
but
besides-
that's against the
yeah, and
guidelines.
besides, this vinyl will have, what do you call it, to keep the
Insulation value?
the frost out and the
Yeah.
heat in.
Yeah.
Storm
The-
is not, there, it has
They
that
use a
built
storm
right in,
window,
so that, yeah.
What at my house in Bangor, I had a big old lumber baron house, and the living room had huge windows. We couldn't afford to do a replacement. It couldn't make them, they were so big. And what I wound up doing was taking the sash out. And now originally these were probably 6/6. They were single sash when we moved in. And we took the sash out and redid them with double glazing, fixed the top sash, made the bottom sash operable, re-weather stripped the bottom sash, and it looked exactly the same.
Yeah,
So, and it was actually fairly economical, because all I was doing was buying a new sash, new glass, which wasn't a lot of money, and it wasn't a big project for any builder in town to do. And we kept the original look. So, granted, that was 1/1, but, so those kind of things become valuable. And as I say, sometimes could be more economical than, if a homeowner's doing that work, it could be quite economical. And with a good storm window, you're getting almost the same performance as a newer window. So, and that could save a fair bit.
Can we get back to, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Back to the commission part. I mean, what's your take on the town? How do we present this in a way that doesn't scare everybody,
Well,
that we're trying to control?
And I think Tom provides really good information about not being the, working with people, not being the veto of ideas. A good consultant would be key to that. And that's why I say I don't think it's wise to throw it all out let's see if the town wants it first, so that,
So
and
how
try
will
not
you
to
do
scare
that
them.
now? What would be the process? This is what you and George put together to offer to the selectmen, is that what you're saying?
To offer to the selectmen.
And then if they approve of this, then,
Then they put it on the warrant, and it just goes to town meeting. And then we'll have to be prepared at town meeting to discuss just what Tom's saying. We want to work with people, not prevent them from doing things, but best practices to preserve the town. And that's really historic preservation is all about. I mean, that's really what it is all about. So, yeah, that would be the course.
We have
So-
trouble getting people on the
I
committee.
know, that's the hard part. That's the hard part all over, so they're summoning me to another meeting.
oh, Don, come on in and sit down.
No,
He's got a meeting upstairs.
Oh, I thought you were
I
finished with that
he's-
meeting.
He's giving me the hook. I've got to go to the meeting upstairs because I promised myself.
All right,
to
well,
it.
can we just finish what you're saying? We don't need to do anything with this. You're ready to present
No,
this.
all I want to do is I'm going to work with George a little bit more to make sure that we're not in conflict with the Board of Appeals and things. He's probably already done it, but I want to go over a little bit closer. But if you're in agreement, then I'm all for presenting it.
So when you leave, we'll read over this to see
Yeah.
if we're in agreement, and I'm sure that we will be. But we need to get back to the idea of a commission because there are real guidelines or
Yeah.
regulations.
And some of that is in the document about the duties and powers. That's already being broken in. So
So how are you going to handle that with the selectmen and with the town?
what George had printed off was the Preservation Commission educating the community and public officials. I think it's wise
Right there.
before
Yeah,
we
one
get
there.
to one, we've got to educate the public officials, and then I think in the course of rolling out what this new next town meeting is going to look like, we'll do some public information. Of course, we're recorded, so people can go back to this meeting and see. But I think it would be wise to maybe have some more public information type meeting, maybe even part of the public hearing process. So
You
that
mean
people know.
before the town
Before
meeting?
town meeting, yep. Yep.
When do you plan on taking this to the selectmen?
I can do it any time that we're ready.
Okay.
I have
Is
to
this
do
a
it.
draft?
I have to do it roughly before January. Anytime before January. I can't hold them up
All right,
much
well-
longer. So
Okay, okay, thank you. What I was gonna suggest is that we could digest this month and be
Bring
prepared
it
to
back
discuss
next
it
month.
next month.
Yep.
Is that okay with
I
you,
think that's
Karen?
great.
Yep.
But the other problem is we really need to have more people on this.
And it may encourage some people to come out knowing that it's held to a new standard.
Any ideas about that, Tom, about how, was that an issue in Bangor?
I don't
Getting-
think so. I think people in the area that are affected might want to be on. I mean, there's certain people who just have a interest in historic buildings.
I think you're right.
Maybe I'm naive about that, but
No,
I
I think
in
he's absolutely
town-
right. I think there are some people that have a real, I mean, you can see sometimes by the residences or the buildings that they own,
Yeah.
that they really care about the historic nature of the building. So all we can do is try. I mean,
Well, it'll be
Well,
interesting
what
to
would
get
happen though
the
if we
flavor
don't?
of the selectmen.
What would happen if we don't?
well, I think that's why Karen hit the nail on the head. Get the flavor of the selectmen. If they
Would what?
get the selectmen's input to see if they feel that it would, garner some interest from, because there's 5 more people that know, probably the entire town between them, and they may have an idea. Maybe they think it can't work, but.
And I think
work
that
on
we
it.
have to understand after we read through this is that it's a lot of work
Yeah.
for this commission, and I'm sure that you could vouch for that.
We have to get upstairs.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you, James.
I'll add that to it. Thank you.
Other outreach publication.
Thank you. Thanks, Tom. Yeah. You know the one
Can I see one of those?
Yeah, I'm just looking to see, it is different.
Yeah. Thank you. So how, I mean, did they just put out the word if they had an opening and needed a new member, or did one of the alternatives step in and then they got another alternative, or?
I think they had a
Person,
list
or-
of openings, probably the way the town does. We didn't have a website in Bangor at the time, but just put the word out if people were interested.
Well, I think now, in this town, don't people apply to join a particular committee or commission?
Yeah.
For example, the land use.
Yeah.
You write out an application and then,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, you know, maybe we need to make it a little more difficult to be part of this committee, or let people know how important it is, and how important it is to be on the committee. And it truly is, if we do what we think we'd like to do. Um,
Well, there was an interview process, I think, when I first applied. Just a while ago, I'm losing my memory, but.
You mean here or in Bangor?
In Bangor.
Mhm.
And of course, when I renewed, I had to be interviewed, so I assume there was initially. And I was never turned down, so I guess maybe there
Were
were
people
very
standing in line?
very relaxed standards, there weren't many people waiting. But it was, you know, people came forward who had an interest in historic
Of course, you
preservation,
have a
people in the
bigger
building
pool there
trades.
in Bangor too.
Yeah, but, you know, this is a pretty, I mean, we're a reasonably sized town, and the area that I think is being considered is sizable enough that there's apt to be some folks who live in the area who might be interested as well.
Well, talk it up.
I will.
And I think getting the word out that we're thinking about this, people, you know, and getting people's
How
ideas and
important it
opinions,
is.
that they
Mhm.
may say, well, when that happens, I'd like to be part of it.
Mhm.
Or, you know, we'll get a taste of any interest, serious interest, as we go. So, but I like Jim's theory that we just would take one step at a time and see how many roadblocks we hit and how we can get around them, or maybe we can't.
But I think that we have to look over this material and realize it is going to be a lot of work and a
Yeah.
lot of time. And most commissions have a professional person heading it up, and I'm sure that was true in Bangor, wasn't it?
In Bangor, there were, usually was either a person from code enforcement or the town solicitor was at the meeting.
But who brought the meeting together? Who chaired the meeting?
Well, there was a chairperson who ran the meeting.
And was that just a volunteer?
I did it. I
You
was
did it.
chair for a couple of years, I was co-chair for a couple of years, and I was chair again, and it was just, you know, if a committee member was interested, somebody would suggest them, and.
And you brought in professional people to consult as you needed them, is that?
Well, in our case in Bangor, Bob Kelly was there at every meeting usually, as somebody in the building trades,
But he was
I
a volunteer also.
He was a volunteer, it was all
But
volunteer.
I'm sure with all the different carpenters and companies in the area, we.
Well, yeah, it isn't so much as a contractor, but his niche was historic preservation.
Yeah.
And that's what he did. And like I say, it was a real interesting business that he had, because he employed a lot of people, because it was very labor intensive. Building trades 100, 200 years ago were very labor intensive compared to today. You know, there's certain things that now, certain structures, like maybe a church, is going to be very expensive to maintain, but old houses, the McGilvery House is a great example. I know a lot of work was done on that recently. It's not a cheap date for that kind
But
of
isn't
structure.
it wonderful? It really is a
It is, it's
good-looking house.
fantastic. But there's a dedication that the homeowner is going to have, and especially those bigger, very ornate buildings, to keep them at the level they're at. There's always maintenance. I know at my house, which is just a little cape, when we started doing some renovations, we found the south wall, much the way you found, with that wall that takes all the weather, had been cobbled together in little pieces as it rotted away over the years as water infiltrated in. And here in Searsport, the big issue is moisture. If it's not direct rain, it's certainly the humidity.
Yeah.
Has a big impact
And
on
a lot of wind
structures.
comes right off the water.
And water, you know, is number one on buildings, whether you're here or in Bangor. And weather is going to be, rain is just getting into the structure is a significant issue. But, you know, that's maintenance.
And I think part of our job is having people appreciate the beauty and the integrity of these houses that were built in the 19th and early 20th
Yeah,
century.
and you know, it doesn't, you're not preempting people from doing additions. The historic preservation folks from Augusta had brought the point that if you want to do an addition, it doesn't mean you're locked into replicating what was there, but you're doing something that's complementary.
We
So
did-
it could be a newer look, but it echoes what was done originally, so
That's what we
you-
did at the library. We had Mike Pullen from WBRC. Do
Mike
you know
used to come
Mike?
before us a lot, yeah.
I saw him at the meeting on Friday, and he said that anything that he can do to help. So I think he will be a good person.
I think
But
he's
your
retired.
words were
Is he
kind of-
retired?
Excuse
now?
me?
I think he's retired, so
Well,
he
he's
might-
no longer with WBRC, but he gave me a card, so
Okay.
he's probably doing something with this other firm.
Mhm.
I think that we'll have the opportunity to call on him, but the words you used were almost exact words that he said to us at the library board. He said, you don't want to replicate. That's not what you do. You just have something that is complementary to the old building. And I think he did that with our Carver Memorial Library. He
Yeah.
did a good job. And he was very nice to work with. I enjoyed working with him.
Yeah, he's very, we dealt with him many times over the years. And
How
he's
did you
always very-
use him as a consultant?
No,
or-
he was usually coming in to represent a client who was
I
doing
think,
something.
didn't he work on the waterworks when you mentioned that? I think maybe.
I don't know. He might have. I left right when that was getting
Mm-hmm.
started. The point I was at, I left right after the roof was approved, and I don't know. I just know once they started scratching the surface, I can't imagine they had enough money to do the project, but they did. It was somebody came into this picture understanding the funding of a historic property like that, and manipulated the system very well. When I was on the commission, I was very concerned about the fact the city let it lapse to the point it was at. And that's part of it too, is not to allow people to let these buildings deteriorate.
Yeah.
And try to find ways to help them if
Well, you
they
know,
need
that's
help.
another good reason to become a certified local government program, because that is the conduit to get funds.
Yeah.
And they said at this workshop last week that there's thousands of dollars of money there and nobody's asked for it. And I
Yeah.
can't imagine, but we can't because we're not a certified local government program.
Well,
But if we
in
were,
Bangor, and I don't remember the person, he was in some kind of non-governmental organization, and he put this whole package together to get the waterworks going. And when I was on the Historic Preservation Commission, I wanted to challenge the city to do something, and asked if we could fine the city for not maintaining their property, which they wouldn't let us do.
No idea.
But it maybe the word got out there, and somebody said, oh, you know, this particular person who put this together from a number of agencies was able to get this property saved. And it wasn't necessarily the highest use of the property, but the property's still there today, thank goodness. And I think it was within a year or two of just completely going and falling into the river. So it was a godsend. That was that location. I have to go, but that location they filmed the Stephen King movie. I think It.
oh really?
And we did a tour of the property at one point at the Historic Preservation Commission, and we're down in the basement. And I want to tell you, it was a Stephen King moment. It was really scary. The whole building was kind of creepy, but it also was amazing
Yeah.
to be in because you were right out over the river.
Have you been in any of it that's been restored?
sorry?
Have you been in any of those buildings since they've been restored?
No, I haven't.
'Cause they look beautiful from the
they
outside. I'm
really
sure
look
they're nice
nice.
on the
Yeah.
inside, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like the mills in Saco and Biddeford. You go down into the bowels of those mills, and it's really, but you can get an appreciation of the tremendous power of the architecture and the building. I mean, they're there to stay. So, well, what I'm going to suggest is that we read this material and then meet next month, which would be November. Is it October?
I'm gonna excuse myself.
Yeah,
I have to
thank
go
you
meet
for
a
coming.
friend.
I will put you, Tom, on our email list.
That'd be great.
And we'd love to have you just come.
I'll
and
come to the next meeting.
Even more,
We
like to have you
usually meet
part
the
of
third Thursday.
Okay.
We just had, this month, we were waiting to see if,
Right. We
Mrs.
changed
Reed
it
was
this
coming,
month, but
yeah.
as you said, it's usually the third Thursday.
Okay.
But
So-
that would be in the email.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Good.
Nice to see you.
I see you.
Yep, this is interesting. I think we should just sit and read it, and maybe if we have any questions, call Jim.
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
If we should read this, and then with any questions, call Jim or George. I'm sure George would help us if we didn't
Well, what are
understand
the
something.
questions of regarding,
What's written in this ordinance?
well, oh, you mean in the ordinance,
Yeah,
right?
before they take it
Yes,
to the selectmen,
yes,
so we
yes.
know if we're asked any questions, we have.
When did he say that he's gonna bring that up?
He said he could do it anytime. It had to be before January.
Well, okay. Why don't we ask him to come again next month?
Yeah.
In October, and we will have read this.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll have our other members here. Yeah, so. Because it'd be
Yeah.
nice to have more input. So, we can't do it alone,
Because it's,
Marie.
no, we can't, and I don't wanna put myself in that position of doing this, out on our own, because we have no authority to do that.
Yeah. Okay, so
Well-
then we will adjourn and read all this and
Right.
come back next month, and I wonder if there's any way we can get some of these copies to Lynn.
Well, yeah, this is for her.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
And you
but
got one for
also
Mary?
would like to get one for Mary.
Yeah,
And I hope that Mary is gonna continue to be, where's my part
and
of
maybe
this?
to Don, does Don need one? I know
Sorry?
he's not a member, Don Garrell. Maybe you can get him
Well,
sleeve.
yeah,
he's been good enough to
sure.
walk this way with us all the time.
So next October, let's see what that date would be.
It would be the 20th, right there.
October 20th.
Yeah. And that way, maybe Jim could take it to the selectmen in November. One of the earlier meetings in November. So we have some idea what the selectmen are looking at before we go any further. Don't you think?
Yes, surely. October 20th,
Yeah.
6:30. Okay, well, thank you, Karen, and,
Yeah. I'll get a hold of this company.
yeah, that would be very helpful, yeah. I hope, do you know Tom? Have you met him before?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I don't know him personally, but I know who he is. He and Rex talk.